Real talk. I want to help more people like you show up online with confidence, starting with your LinkedIn profile. If your profile still reads like a job history instead of a reflection of who you are now, we need to fix that. I offer a LinkedIn makeover service where I rewrite your headline, your about section, and your experience to tell your story in a way that gets noticed, that showcases your expertise. It's personal, it's real, and it's all about helping you stand out for the right reasons. Book your makeover at sandy-adams.com/LinkedIn, and let's get your profile working for you.
He asked her, like, what is Jason going to do? What's he planning to do once he goes to college? And she said, well, we've actually kind of been talking about maybe getting into journalism. And he said, well, we can always use extra help on Friday nights for football, for high school football. She told me that, and I said, let's go.
Today on the Sideline, I'm talking with the Commercial Appeal's Memphis men's basketball beat reporter. Jason Munz is up next. Welcome back to the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I am your host, Sandy Adams, and this is where we dive deep into the world of sports, talking with retired athletes, current athletes, and everyone that makes the sports world great. A quick reminder, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Audible, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And it would mean the world to me if you could take 2 minutes or even 1 minute and leave the show a review on Apple or Spotify. To learn more about the show, visit our website at 5thqrtpodcast.com. Now grab your iced tea or your coffee. Get ready to be motivated and inspired because this is where the real stories are told. Today on the Sideline, we're diving into the person behind the sports stories. Award-winning journalist Jason Munz is the Memphis basketball beat writer for the Commercial Appeal here in Memphis, bringing Tiger fans courtside with every game, every headline, and every behind-the-scenes moment. From growing up in the historic town of Natchez, Mississippi, to chasing stories in Hattiesburg and landing in Memphis in 2018, Jason has built a career on curiosity, hustle, and a deep love for the game. We're talking about how he found his way into journalism, the moments that keep him inspired, and what it's really covering one of college basketball's most passionate programs and fan bases. I couldn't be more excited to welcome to the show Jason Munz. Jason, welcome.
Thank you, Sandy. I could not be more excited to be here because I love what I do. I love talking about it. I love talking about Tiger basketball. So thank you. I appreciate it.
You are quite welcome. I want to get started because I think we've maybe met once. I think I said hello to you after one of Penny's radio shows. I don't know. You always made me like a little nervous. I don't know why. I don't know.
I don't hear that very often.
Jeff Brightwell made me a little nervous too. And I have to say, Coach Hardaway made me a little nervous too, but it's all good. So yeah, before the season gets really started, I was trying to get all of the big reporters in the area and stuff. And I wanted to get you on here just because I think that the stories you tell are very important. And especially in the digital age, I think that there's a difference, which we'll get into later, about true journalism and everything else, which I find fascinating as the digital world kind of evolves around that. You are covering the Memphis Tigers for the Commercial Appeal here in Memphis, but you're not from Memphis. You're actually down from Mississippi. You're actually from one of the most historic towns, which I love. I've been to Natchez a couple of times. I promise you guys, I'm not going to talk the whole time. When I lived in Houston, and I would, because I'm originally from Tennessee, I would go the south route from Houston to Memphis. So I'd go through Louisiana and Mississippi. And if it took too long, I'd always stop in Natchez and spend the night at one of the bed and breakfasts there. And just a lovely little town. It's very pretty. And I am a huge history buff, so that's one of the things. So what was it like growing up in Natchez, Mississippi?
I did grow up in Natchez. I left there when I graduated high school, and my parents still live there. I always like to tell people it's a great place to visit, and I'll just leave it at that. It's a small town. It is steeped in history and all that stuff, but I thoroughly enjoyed my being raised in Natchez. It's right on the river, much like Memphis. And yeah, it's a really just an interesting place, especially if like you mentioned you're into
Right.
sort of the history and all that stuff. And if you're into bed and breakfast, there's plenty of those. But yeah, it's a very, I don't know, I don't think quirky is the right word. It's a very,
It's a small town
yeah,
in every essence of that word.
yeah. It's got a
Yes.
lot of character though. It's definitely got a lot of character, and I enjoyed I enjoyed growing up there.
How did you play sports as a child?
I did. I played baseball, football, and basketball, but I probably played baseball more than any of the others. I played it from the time I could all the way through
Right.
high school. I had a chance to go play at the junior college level. I was a halfway decent catcher, but I chose to, I didn't see it going much further than that. And rather than go that route, I decided to go straight to begin college at the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg. But yeah, I played baseball, basketball, and football, and yeah, just like most everybody else.
It's interesting. There's a lot of the male athletes on here, they played all three sports. I remember Andre Turner. What was interesting about his was that he was going to go baseball up until the last moment before graduation from high school.
Wow. That's
It was shocking. And he said that his dad really loved baseball. And he was leaning more towards that. And at the last moment, he decided to go with basketball, which I found that pretty amazing. It was interesting to think about that. Do you follow baseball now?
Not as much as I did. I was hardcore into Major League Baseball. I eventually got into college baseball. Like growing up in Natchez, I would say the closest Division I program to where I grew up was LSU. It's only about an hour from Natchez. When I was, really into it, LSU was really good. They won the College World Series multiple times when I was growing up, and it wasn't the Little League World Series. It was a different one, but it was a World Series nonetheless. And the team that I was on advanced to the World Series. We were 12 or 13 or something like that. And we were whisked away to the bustling metropolis of West Monroe, Louisiana to play this World Series. But it was that they had this opening ceremony thing, and the keynote speaker was Skip Bertman, the legendary, iconic Hall of Fame former LSU baseball coach. And yeah, I watched a lot of LSU baseball. I watched a lot of Atlanta Braves just because they were on TV every day, it felt. And so, yeah, I watched a lot of it then. But as I grew up, and as it happens with pretty much everybody, our attention spans get shorter and shorter as we get older. And so baseball is harder and harder to watch as you grow up and you start watching other stuff. But baseball was always it for me growing up. But now it's predominantly basketball now. I don't find as much enjoyment even in watching football as much as I do basketball.
Did you always have a love for basketball, or did that come with the journalism?
I would say that there was an appreciation. I don't know as much as there was a love. Like, I love baseball. That was it for me. When I was growing up, I wanted to play it. And when I realized that probably wasn't going to happen, I wanted to coach it. And then I realized that probably wasn't going to materialize. And it became, my dream was like, I want to be the Braves beat writer. That was like sort of the dream before I actually got into the industry. But there was always at least the appreciation for basketball. And then as you get into it and you start covering it and that sort of thing, you find that love for it. That's how it played out for me.
I think I grew up in a small town north of Jackson, McKenzie, Tennessee. And I had liked basketball, but it wasn't until I started college at Memphis State. I started the same year Larry Finch became coach. Okay. And my biggest thing was I had a class in the field house, and I saw Sylvester Gray and Marvin Alexander walk out of the gym. And I was like, I've never seen men that large before, like ever. And I started going to the basketball games, and you just develop this love for it. Yeah. And I think I've talked about that a lot over the years, is Memphis just embraces it, and it becomes such a part of the fabric of the city. So what got you into journalism? So you're playing these three sports. Like, how did you develop that love for writing?
So I was getting to the point where, like everybody does, I was like, I don't know, 16, 17 years old. I was getting to the point where it was like, I got to start thinking about what I'm going to do. What do I want to do? We're going to start, your parents kind of sit you down and they're like, you can't just go to college. You'd
be surprised at how many kids think that they can.
Well, yeah. But at least my parents were like, you have to have an idea of what you want to do. And just kind of brainstorming or whatever. What are you interested in? What are you curious about? And those sorts of things. And one of the things that always kept coming up was, hey, you're not half bad in your English classes and you love sports. There was I want to say it might have been the summer of 1993 or 94, somewhere in there. And it was that summer. And my parents used to subscribe to USA Today. Mm-hmm. And it became like this almost obsession when I first came across. I'd go out every morning and get the paper at the end of the driveway, and I would immediately flip to the 2 inside pages, the full pages that were side by side that had all the box scores, all the little mini recaps. It had the standings. It had the stats, the leaders in the American League and the National League. And I started clipping out those 2 pages every single day of that entire summer. And I still have somewhere in a box somewhere.
That's cool.
They are still, and it's that whole summer, and they're all stacked together and they're in a box. But it was like, I found this sort of passion for sports and sports information and like writing and things like that. And I would say that's probably where I was like, when it first bit me, where it was like, I have this, and then I've got this newspaper thing, and I could probably do this. And, but it was probably a few years later, one of the teams that I was on won a state championship. And then that team was the first one from Natchez to do that at that age group. And then the second team to win that particular state championship, my brother was on the team. My younger brother was on the team. And so the local paper, the Natchez Democrat, thought that would make a good little feature story. You got 2 brothers who, one was on the first team, and now this team is one. It is. Yeah. And I think it was 1997, I want to say. And we did the interview, and that all happened. And then they were taking our pictures. The photographer for the paper was taking our pictures, and the reporter was just hanging out to the side talking to my mom. And he asked her, what is Jason going to do? What's he planning to do once he goes to college? And she said, we've actually been talking about maybe getting into journalism. And he said, we can always use extra help on Friday nights for high school football. And she told me that, and I said, let's go. And it was
about some networking there. Props for your mom over there.
She's definitely, she knows how to seize on an opportunity, and it's been no looking back since then.
So you decided to go to the University of Southern Mississippi. Was there any other choice about where you would go?
LSU was in the mix. And then, like I said, there was a junior college possibility if I was going to pursue a couple of years of playing baseball at that level. But those were the only, I'm almost positive those were the only 3 schools that I applied to. Right. So, yeah, that was it. And the reason why, Southern Miss and Hattiesburg was so high on the list was because when I keep talking about these growing up playing baseball and these state tournaments, things like that, most of these state tournaments took place in Hattiesburg. And so we spent a lot of time, my family spent a lot of time in Hattiesburg when I was like 12, 13, 14 years old. And it just felt natural. Like we really enjoyed our time, the time that we spent there. And yeah, it felt natural. And that was ultimately where I went.
So was there any type of culture shock or anything when you started college?
Not really. Hattiesburg is a college town and Natchez is not, but they're both in South Mississippi. They're only about 2.5 hours apart. I had friends who who I graduated with and things like that, who helped the transition. There's always adjustments and things like that, but it wasn't. And again, I had already spent some time in and around Hattiesburg. It was a pretty smooth transition. And Hattiesburg makes that easy. I lived there for almost 20 years, counting everything, counting college and everything. Yeah, it's a great place, and it was really easy to get acclimated there.
Were any of your classes like really hard? Did you start taking any of your journalism classes and be like, oh my God, what have I done?
I was not the biggest fan of school. So all classes sucked. I was
Yes.
like, to me, it wasn't that I couldn't stand school. It was just that it wasn't like the best thing in the world to me. But no, like the journalism stuff was always relatively, I'm doing it and have been doing it for a long
Sure.
time. So it came, and I had the experience. Like when I started working Friday Night Football for the paper in Natchez, I was a junior in high school.
Oh, wow.
I did that for an entire year, and then I did it for 2 years actually. So I had that experience, and I guess the harder ones were like journalism law and
Yeah.
ethics and stuff like that. The stuff that's like takes research and all that sort of stuff like that. That was never, I didn't too much enjoy that. And I was like photography that took a while to click.
Yeah.
To get, it wasn't the easiest thing to get through, but like the other stuff that dealt with reporting and writing and those sorts of things, that was always, I won't say easy, but it was okay.
I remember my undergrad was international relations, and a lot of it was political science, but I was forced to take a foreign language. And I'm like, if I go work overseas, I'm going to pay someone to interpret. Why do I have to take a foreign language? And I just could not, my brain just would not. That was one of the classes. I had to take 2 years of it. It was just, I couldn't deal with it. I think that's pretty incredible that you started working in what you wanted to do in high school. And I wished more high school students took a chance and tried to figure some things out. And even college students, I see a lot of them, and I notice more journalists probably now, but wanting to be hired but they don't have the experience. And my thing is, you can make your experience. You live in a world where everything is free. You can go and make a YouTube channel and start talking about sports, like whatever. So I think that's pretty great that, again, props to your mom, but taking that role and just diving in. Was there anything that was surprising when you started covering the high school football that maybe you didn't like? We always look at jobs and, oh, that's so easy to do. But was there anything that was surprising to you, or did it just come natural?
I would say not really surprising, but so I went to the high school that I went to is called Cathedral High School, and there's about 6 or 8 high schools in the Natchez coverage area. And
really?
So, yeah,
I wouldn't have guessed that.
So you've got, I want to say there were 4 in Natchez for sure. When I was living there was definitely 4 in Natchez. But then you had just across the river in Vidalia, Louisiana, you had Vidalia. The next town over from there was Faraday, Louisiana, where Jerry Lee Lewis is originally from. And so they had 2 high schools there. So like that, it was all in the same coverage area. So, but inevitably I had to, because it was such a small coverage area, so few schools, like I would get sent to cover games at my high school. And that was kind of interesting. Like I'm interviewing my geometry teacher, who's also the football coach, after games. And I'm like talking to my classmates about I'm grilling them about the error that they made in the 4th inning that cost them the game or whatever. So that was one of the more interesting aspects of working in the city that you live in and you grew up in, or that as you're growing up, it was, I don't want to say it was necessarily challenging, but it
had its moments.
Created some surprising feelings, I guess we'll say.
So you go through college at University of Southern Mississippi, and did you already have a game plan in mind about where you were going to work after college?
I did. I wanted to work for the Hattiesburg American. That was my singular goal. I didn't have these super high aspirations at the time. In the early 2000s, the Hattiesburg American, like their newsroom had probably 30 or 40 people in it. Today, it's down to less than a handful, I think. Yeah. I think when people think about the Hattiesburg media scene, it's a lot different today than it was then. And so I had these, like, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to work for the Hattiesburg American. I wasn't thinking about anything else. I just wanted to work for the Hattiesburg American. I wanted to cover the University of Southern Mississippi for the Hattiesburg American. And so, yeah, that was definitely the goal even before I started college. Like when I made the decision to go to Southern Miss, I was already working for the paper in Natchez. And so it was like, I'm going here. I want to work there. It didn't quite happen. It wasn't seamless, but eventually got there.
So I was doing research and I read that you met your wife in college. Is that correct? Or in Hattiesburg?
In Hattiesburg, yes.
Okay.
Yes. We met. I started at the paper there, the Hattiesburg American, in February of 2006. And she started there in April of 2006.
Okay.
And that's when we met.
Okay.
Yep.
So when did you were working there and you're writing and you're a sports reporter and you're living your dream, right? Okay.
Yeah, it was that, yeah, it sounds funny saying it now, but yeah, that was the dream at that point.
Yes. So when did things start? When did you start wishing that you had something else or aspiring to be something else?
All right, before we get into the next topic, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about something that can really help you level up your personal brand. I've created an exclusive new book called The Visionary Personal Brand Playbook. It's perfect for those of you who have big goals but aren't exactly sure how to make your brand stand out or, for that matter, where to even start. It's packed with actionable tips that you can start using right now, today. If you're interested, head over to my website at sandy-adams.com/playbook and grab your copy. Now back to the show.
Probably somewhere, I would say I became the Southern Miss beat writer in 2011, maybe, I want to say. Yeah, like I said, I started there in 2006 and became a Southern Miss. I was the high school beat writer before that. I was a general assignment sports reporter before that. And so, yeah, I got to became the Southern Miss beat writer in 2011 or 12. And it was that was a goal of mine. After 2 or 3 years after having reached your goal, naturally you start thinking about the next thing. And my wife also worked at the Hattiesburg American, and she's thinking about her next steps, and you just automatically start thinking that way. But it was after a few years, 2 or 3 years of being on the Southern Miss beat, where it was like, okay, it's about time to maybe challenge yourself, to re-challenge yourself. I felt like I was in a good place, and not that things were, boring or monotonous or anything like that, but it was like, I'm ready for that feeling again. I want to get that feeling again, of that hungry feeling again. And I started poking around and seeing what else was out there at that time. And it took a little while, but eventually the right opportunity came along, and I took it.
And we'll get to that in a second. I want to pop back. I want to know, do you remember the first byline that had your name on it? If I'm using the correct terminology.
That is the correct terminology. Yes. I know the first thing I covered, so I assume that was the first byline I had. His name's Joey Martin. He was the sports writer who wrote the story, the feature on me and my brother. And when he was talking to my mom and everything, he said, just tell Jason to come up to the office this day, whatever day, and we will fill out some paperwork. We'll talk to him a little bit, and we'll go from there. I want to say it was maybe the next week or 2 weeks later that there was like a high school jamboree at some school. And they were like, you're going to come with me. We're going to go out there, and you're not going to write anything, but you're going to come with me. We're going to show you how we do it and what's expected of you. And that was at Natchez High. And then the very next week I was on my own. The training wheels were off. The school was called Trinity Episcopal.
Okay.
I don't think it's still open, but it's where I'm going to get the name. It's where Stephen Ridley went to high school, who was a running back at LSU, who went on to play for the Patriots and a couple other teams. It's a very tiny high school. Again, I'm pretty sure it's closed, but that was the first game that I ever covered on my own. So that would have been the first byline. And it was probably just their season opener in 1997. But that was a big, that 1997 was a time, especially in small town Mississippi, where, getting your name in the paper was this
exactly
thrilling thing. And then to have your byline in there, that was a really neat thing. I think by that point I was still going out to the end of the driveway to get the USA Today, but that day it was definitely the local paper. Like that took precedence. I don't think I even opened the USA Today that day.
Okay, I was curious. You said that one summer you cut out all the stats from the USA Today paper. What were you doing with them? Were you writing your own stories? Were you just studying them? Like, why were you keeping them?
Okay, so there's probably multiple ways to answer this. Like I'm a collector of stuff in general.
Okay.
Aaron would say I'm a hoarder. I say I'm a collector. But so there's just that innate proclivity to just collect things. But they were just like study material. It was just like I read the stories over and over again to try and figure out what all goes into writing a story. I studied the stats. I studied the standings. It was just this. Obviously, this was pre-internet or pre what internet is today, and that was the way you consumed content. And as far as why I still have it, I think it's more just like out of sentimental value. It's probably for that reasons. Just like this here, I feel like I knew. Yeah, that's it. I knew 28 years ago that I'd be having this conversation on your podcast, and I would be able to answer it earnestly and genuinely. That was the reason.
I did things like that when I was little too. I cut out all these stories I wrote out all these stories. I copied them from the encyclopedia about Ramses the Great because I was fascinated by ancient Egypt. And I ended up like my undergrad was really got me into Middle Eastern politics and all this other stuff. And so it was just, and my sister makes fun of me. She says, I don't know why you kept them. And I'm like, who knows when I might need to refer back to them someday.
Is that what drew you to Memphis? The ancient Egypt connection?
No, what drew me to Memphis was it was between Memphis and Southern Methodist University. My sister had lived in Dallas, and so I was in high school, and I was just fascinated by Dallas and SMU. But it came down to it was close enough to home. It was 2 hours from my hometown, and it was far enough away, and everyone else was going to University of Tennessee, and I hate Orange, still do. Hate University of Texas too. But to me, it was just, I don't know, it was the history of the city, the grit, and just the good, bad, and ugly, and everything about it. Just, to me, it had more character. And I never regret that. It was an amazing experience that when I lived here and went to school here and met so many incredible people. And that's why I moved back from Houston, was because of Memphis. But that was a good observation. That was a good question to ask.
Very cool.
Okay, so let's talk about working for the Hattiesburg American. If you look back at your career, it is the Hattiesburg American, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If you look at like your whole coverage, are there any one or two stories that really stick out that you really loved, that you really enjoyed writing about, or it was something that was just like, I was there at that moment?
Working in Hattiesburg gave me the opportunity. Like I do this all the time. I can't remember the number, but I covered the Super Bowl.
I do that too.
It was the Super Bowl where the Ravens beat the 49ers in New Orleans.
Can't help you. I'm not a football fan, so I
don't remember the number, but I remember it was the one where Beyonce was the halftime act, and
I remember that. Yeah,
and the lights went out.
Yeah,
the power went out, and they had to stop the game. I was like working in Hattiesburg afforded me the opportunity to be there for that, because New Orleans is only like an hour and 20 minutes away from Hattiesburg. So we got credentials, and I went down there and found some people from Hattiesburg who had gone to the game, and I want to say there was a couple of players in the game who had Southern Miss or Hattiesburg connections. It's very tangential, super periphery ties to Hattiesburg, but we found them, and that I was able to cover some other Saints games. I'm a Saints fan, covered some Saints games, and that was nice. And so, working at the paper there gave me the opportunity to do certain things like that were really nice. But as far as stories are concerned, I'm a big human interest person. Like, I really like to write those kinds of stories. That's probably not like my favorite thing to do, but it's among the most rewarding when I do them right. And there were a couple of them, like there was one of the local high schools had a player who was shot and killed before that, whatever season it was. And they dedicated their season to him and they went on to win the state championship. And it was just this very inspiring story that gave me some extra juice to be able to record it and document it and chronicle it. And then I think about, there's a story I did he was an offensive lineman who played for another one of the local high schools in that area. And he was like 6'7", 300 pounds, huge. He was going to go on and play more, but that was he was a senior and that was the first year he had ever played football. And the reason why is because he had already at 17 years old had battled a years-long substance abuse issue and overcame it and went on but he got a junior college scholarship to play football and just turned his life around. And it's those types of things that I really enjoyed that stand out in my memory.
This is like my third podcast, but for me, it's the stories. It's how people get from one point to the next point and just the things that shape them. And for me, it's fascinating to be able to just ask those questions and really get into it. And yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Those are the things that I think really stand out for me. You talked about ready to make a change and you looked around, and what was it about the commercial appeal in Memphis that really stuck to you and made you make that decision to leave Hattiesburg?
The commercial appeal has a very strong reputation for being one of the best papers in the country. I mean, has had that for a very long time. And, it was always on the radar especially when I started thinking about what the next move might look like. That was always one of the first things that I would think about. And as I was going through that process, there wasn't like an opportunity, whether it was, there wasn't an opening yet or it just didn't feel like the right time or whatever. But then the opportunity did come up and it was just like, this feels like the right move. And I don't really know how to explain that other than to say that, like I said, the reputation for the commercial appeal speaks for itself. And back in those days, obviously Memphis and Southern Miss were in the same conference. And so there's some familiarity, and although you don't fully know and can't fully appreciate everything that I've come to know and appreciate about Memphis and about the school and about the programs and about the fans and the people here, like you don't know it yet, but you do have an idea just crossing over from time to time as you do when two schools are in the same conference. Yeah, it was just like, it was one of those things where as soon as the opportunity presented itself, the wheels, I pressed the gas pretty hard. And the interesting thing is I applied, the first time I applied to the commercial appeal, I applied to be the football beat writer in 2017 and didn't get it. And then wound up, it's one of those examples of as soon as you stop trying so hard, that's when it happens for you. And so that was how this went.
Had you been to Memphis a lot? Were you familiar enough with the city?
I had been to Memphis twice. Once I don't remember because I was too young, and once I don't remember because it was a buddy's bachelor party. So I didn't have a huge working knowledge of Memphis, although I had been here a couple of times. Like I said, my parents had a friend who lived here, but I was way too young, and then came up with some buddies. I want to say, I forget what year it was, but it was for a bachelor party, and I had a really good time. I'm sure. I'm told, but it was, so my experiences here were rather limited, but did have some working knowledge of it.
So you got here, 1 year prior to Penny getting hired?
He was hired in April of 2018 and I got here in June of 2018.
Oh,
so
okay.
I
was still in Houston. I didn't get here till 2020.
Okay. So I came in right after him, and I was hired to be what they call a digital producer.
I was curious, what is that?
Okay. It's hard to explain. It's just basically if there was something that was happening in news or whatever, they would send me to it to get video. They would send me to it to maybe get photos. I was in charge of optimizing the content that was on our website, basically like a website manager / video producer. We'll just call it that. There was a fire that I went out to once and did video when Trump came. I forget what year it was. I guess it would have been 2018. Trump came and did like a campaign stop in South Haven at the Landers Center, and I was sent out to do the live stream for that. So it was an all-encompassing role.
So you weren't hired then to write for the basketball. So you moved your family and your life to Memphis to do this. It's something that I don't think a lot of people realize. When I'd gone to a couple of the conference tournaments in Fort Worth, and I'm amazed that the reporters for the television shows have to do their own video. They have to shoot their own video. And that kind of amazes me. Was that something that you had done in Hattiesburg? Was the video production and the photography stuff?
Yeah. And that, going back to certain things that I've done, that I did while I was in Hattiesburg that I'm pretty proud of, is I produced, edited, published we did it for 3 seasons. The baseball program there is arguably the most successful, most decorated program, at least right now, for that school. And they gave me access, as much access as I wanted every week for 3 seasons. It was like a behind the scenes SNL style skit based web series. And we would pick a player each year who was a senior, and they would be the host. And the idea in the beginning was they would be the host and they would interview their teammates, and it would just be getting to know the team. It quickly evolved into, because these young people can get to be a little silly, especially when the coaches aren't around. It turned into this thing that was like an SNL style thing. And we gave them a title. Like the first one, the host was Jake Winston, so we called it "What's Up with Winston." And then Dylan Bordeaux was the host the next year, so we called it Bordeaux Knows, like a play on.
I love that.
Kind of like a play on the old Bo knows whatever. And every episode was different. It was Bordeaux knows this or Bordeaux knows that, and those won some awards. That was probably some of the most rewarding work that I did there. Was video stuff. No stories were ever written about any of the time that I spent with those guys while we were filming. It was strictly video, and I'm sure that's probably a big reason why they felt I was qualified to be the digital producer for the commercial appeal back in 2018.
I'm sure it is. Are those episodes still available?
They're still around.
If anybody wants to watch, I'll do some research and see if I can find them, and I'll put them in the show notes. I think that would be great. So you move here. Did your wife ever think you were crazy about wanting to relocate to Memphis?
She relocated before I did, as a matter of fact. I interviewed in late 2017 for the football
beat writer.
You behind. She did, actually. And that's exactly what happened. I interviewed in fall of 2017 to be the football beat writer and didn't get it. So because I did that, she also went for a position here and she got it. She got it before I got what I got. And that's part of the reason why I took the digital producer spot, was because to get up here, it didn't really matter to me what I was doing. Of course, I wanted to be in sports, but I had to get up here because she was already up here. So yeah, she came up here in April of 2018, and I didn't get up here until June. So yeah, that's how that went.
That's pretty cool. What were your, that first year? So you were a digital producer for what, one whole year? And
I don't think it was a full year. I started in June of 2018. Maybe it was, because I did not become the basketball beat writer until August of 2019. Yeah, a little more than a year.
Okay. What was that first year like living in Memphis? What did you have some favorite moments? I remember my favorite moments of my first year in Memphis. What were yours?
Are we talking about work or
either?
I was at FedEx Forum for the Tennessee game, the Balled Up Fist Tennessee game. I was there strictly to do video.
Right.
And so that was before I got into sports full time, but that was a big enough deal where they sent me to help out that day. So that was a fun day that first year. I'm trying to think outside of that.
What'd you like about the city, or what was surprising about the city?
There's so much to love about the city. I would say the food was probably the first on the list in terms of the chronology of it.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that we did was go to the barbecue shop. And I want to say that was the first meal we had in Memphis together. And so you learn quickly that I learned quickly that I'm going to love it here just because of the food, and everything else was just going to be icing on the cake. But so there was that. And I spent a lot of time in New Orleans, being an hour and a half away from there for 20 years.
Yes.
And love New Orleans. Absolutely love New Orleans for all kinds of reasons. And I realized very quickly that I love Memphis for all the same reasons: the food, the vibe, the people, the character. You mentioned character earlier when talking about Memphis. And there are very few places in this country that have such distinct character.
I agree with you on that.
And Memphis is one of them. You go to Dallas, you go to Orlando, you go to, I shouldn't be naming names, but like, you don't feel
you don't
something.
for whatever reason.
You don't, there's not a feeling that's attached to most places you go in this country, but Memphis is one of them where that is true. And that was a big thing in that first year, was just like that feeling that you have being here is very real and it's very tangible.
No, I agree with you. I lived in Houston for 16 years, and it's the third or fourth largest city in the United States. And for me, it was just hard to get attached to it.
Yeah, my brother lived there for 6 years, 6 years maybe. And so I spent some time there too.
Yeah.
And I know what you mean.
It's hard. There was nothing to attach myself to. And I mentioned my sister lived in Dallas when I was in high school. And so I spent like every summer there. But the same thing, there's nothing to attach to it. It's just buildings and stuff. And I'm sure like the people make up some of it. But Memphis just grabs you. It either grabs you or it doesn't. You either like it or you don't. But I agree with that. So let's talk about you because I'm running out of time with you. We've talked about a lot, but if you're okay, we're going to keep going.
Let's go.
Okay. So you get the job as the basketball writer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was in your mind about how you were going to handle that position and how you were going to make it your own?
One of the things that I said in my interview, one of like my ideas, like how I sold myself to the editor, was it was coming up on, so that was 2019. And it was cut. So that would have been I'm terrible at math. It was the 35th anniversary of that season. The upcoming season was the 35th anniversary of the 84-85 Final Four run.
Okay.
With Keith Lee and William Bedford and Andre Turner. And I love history. Mm-hmm. And so I pitched that I was going to do this oral history project on that season. I was going to just talk to people about that season and put together an oral history project. And it quickly became what was going to be one story, quickly became 5. And so it was like, I think that is probably what initially, even though the first thing that I did, even though my very first assignment when the job was officially given to me was the exhibition tour of the Bahamas. That was my first week, was being sent to the Bahamas to cover Memphis basketball. What a
hardship. What a hardship.
I know. It's woe is me. But even though that was the very first thing that I did, I think what actually grabbed me and let me know that this was what I want to do for the foreseeable future was that oral history project. I fell in love with the program and the history and the tradition. You hear people talk about it. Like I'd been here for a little more than a year, and you hear people talk about Memphis basketball and the tradition and the history and all that stuff. But it's a whole other thing to go back and
It is.
feel it for yourself, even though you weren't here to experience it. The way I put this whole thing together, I felt it. And that's really what initially, I think, let me know that this was, it validated my decision to pursue that position.
So you've been here, what, 7 years?
Yep.
7 years. And it has been a roller coaster. We've all grown. I'm going to say that. We've all grown as fans, as a team, as a school. We've all grown. What has been a couple of the highlights that you've written about?
I would say, I think back to like along the same lines of some of the stories that I was talking about before, those human interest stories, writing Kendrick Davis's story, like really digging into his backstory where his father goes missing and he's having to overcome growing up in a very rough neighborhood of Houston, and just his whole story going into his last season of his college career. I really enjoyed that. There was a story I wrote about DeAndre Williams that I really enjoyed reporting and writing. It was right when NIL was first starting, and I think it was his last season.
Right.
There was a couple who had lost a son, and the mother, her favorite player was DeAndre because he reminded her of her son.
You'll make me cry, aren't you?
I don't mean to. I'm sorry. But but it is. It's one of those things that sticks with you. And anyway, the husband had reached out to DeAndre and said, "Hey, you're my wife's favorite player. Would you mind recording like a video and just telling her it's going to be okay and these sorts of things?" And he did it, and I got wind of it, and so I was able to do a story on him and them, and that's one that I really enjoyed. The conference championships; those are always fun to document, but it's so difficult. I'm doing both myself and the program a disservice because there have been, it doesn't, like, I could probably sit here and think for a day on what my favorite stories were just for the past year, and I wouldn't be able to do it just because so much stuff happens on this beat even in the span of just 1 year. And then we're trying to think about 7, but yeah, again, just those are the ones that sort of really stand out as those human interest ones. And then the oral history stuff, like I still go back and read, like we republished that oral history project.
I remember that
recently within the last year because it was the 40th anniversary. We'd come up on the 40th anniversary. I got to relive that one in a way. And I still sometimes go back and reread those because there were so many voices. I interviewed Jim Strickland for it. I interviewed, like I mentioned, Andre Turner. I interviewed Lee Fowler, who was an assistant on that team. And I interviewed assistants from Florida State. I interviewed Gary Williams from Boston College. That was a really fun project.
I think that people that are not sports fans, or people in general may not understand that when you write about sports, it's not just the game. Because all these people make up the game and the city that the team is in, and just there's so many other things that incorporate all of this. You're not just reporting the score. And I think that it's something that for me, because my sister laughs all the time. She lives in Boston and she's not a sports fan except when Tom Brady was winning. I just don't get it. And I said, I don't know if it's living here, but it's just like most of my really good friends I've met through basketball. And I remember when I moved here and just seeing how the sport itself just embraces everyone, and people on the street, people that probably would never talk to each other, talking to each other and conversing. And just there's so much, it's that character that's built into it. And there's so much story behind everything. I want to ask, what was the first time that you met Penny? What was that like for you?
Oh, it probably was before I even got on the beat. I want to say it was at just a random afternoon media availability.
Right.
And I probably volunteered to go and do video for the website. So yeah, I'm almost positive that's right. It would have been sometime in 2018 before his first season, before his first season. And that was I played some basketball, and playing some basketball in the mid 90s. Like it's Penny Hardaway is right front and center, basically.
That's true.
And I will say, so I felt growing up, I felt an attachment to Shaquille O'Neal because he played at LSU. And as I said, LSU was the closest major college to where I grew up. There was even like an exhibition game that LSU came to Natchez and played. I didn't
That's
go.
cool.
I didn't go, but my dad did. And so I felt this attachment to Shaq. And then so he goes to Orlando. The next year, Penny goes to Orlando. Orlando becomes my favorite team. They're this like hot young upstart, and they became my favorite team. And so yes, that by the time I got here, I was a veteran. And
Right.
so I didn't go into that first interaction with Penny probably as wide-eyed as I would have had I been in my mid-20s, but
Right.
there was still very much at least some semblance of a little starstruck, just
Sure.
because you're in a room with him and there's only 6 other people maybe. And, but yeah, that was definitely a memorable thing, that feeling when you first meet him.
A funny story. I interviewed Jeff Mack, and I asked him if he'd ever messed up anybody's name, and Penny's was the one he messed up.
How?
I forgot.
Jeff.
It was so funny. He was like, he said something about he froze, and he never practices the names, and he froze, and he got he got the emphasis on the syllable wrong or something.
I see. Okay.
And they had recorded it, and he said they kept replaying it. And he finally was like, it is what it is. I'm not going to go back and redo it. That's the only time he's ever done. I laughed so hard when he told me that. So if anybody's out there, go listen to the one with Jeff Mack, and you can laugh about.
I'm going to bring it up to him the next time I see him.
Okay. I've lost my train of thought now. Okay.
We should just talk more about Jeff Mack. We should just spend the rest of our time ribbing Jeff Mack.
Oh, it was funny. And then there's one question. I'll tell you what his answer was at the end when I asked you that, because that was also funny. Okay, so let's talk about college students, because we've talked about that a little bit. So what's your best advice, like 3 tips for them? If someone's in college and they're pursuing journalism, let's talk sports journalism.
Okay.
What are 3 tips for them that you would give them?
Be humble. Like there's no job should be too small. Don't box yourself into the thought that you've got to immediately, just because you want to be covering Titans or the Tigers or the Grizzlies or whatever, immediately don't think that. Honestly, some of the best experiences my most formative experiences in this industry came just covering like sometimes youth baseball or high school basketball or whatever. So that's it. So that's probably number 1. It's just humility. Is don't ever think that something is beneath you. I was telling somebody this somewhat recently. I don't think I would be anywhere near where I am now had I not gone through taking the lumps, so to speak.
Sure, I agree.
I wouldn't, maybe I'd be here, but I don't feel like I'd be as good of a reporter as I am had I not had the experiences that I have. And I came up doing high school stuff and a lot of even youth sports. And it doesn't seem like it's helpful in the moment, but
Right.
it absolutely is. That would be one thing. The other thing is, I would say, like, never lose that hunger. Be passionate. If you don't feel a passion for this or for really anything, I mean, this is not just journalism specific. It's if you don't feel passionate about what you're doing, then you shouldn't probably be doing it. But definitely That applies here. If you're not passionate about it, figure out a way to be passionate about it
I agree.
and never lose. As soon as you start to lose it, you should probably start looking to do something else, because you're not going to be the best version of yourself that you could possibly be. And then a third piece of advice is get as much experience as you possibly can. I was told, I distinctly remember this, the very first meeting I had, like when I was signing going through the paperwork and stuff to be a freelancer be a Friday night freelancer at the paper in Natchez, was experience counts at least 2 to 1 to education.
I agree.
In this field, and maybe even 3 to 1 or 4 to 1. So as much experience as you can possibly get, if it's put in front of you, you take it. It's invaluable. You can go to school, and you should go to school. Everybody should go to school and do what they can, but experience is the best teacher in this field.
I totally agree. When I started my photography business, I just went out and created my own shoots. I created them and showed people, and the whole way you're getting the experience and you're creating work and you're learning from it. And I think that's the best advice for any career. To do that. Just go out there and find the experience for yourself. So have you ever covered a story that really challenged you personally?
Personally,
maybe it was hard to write because you didn't necessarily agree.
Sure. You go out and sometimes you cover a protest or something, or you cover a rally that's happened, where you have to you have to maintain your objectivity where it's harder to maintain your objectivity than it normally is. That has happened. That is above all else in this profession, objectivity is paramount. And like that was taught to me from the very beginning. And that's a hard thing as long as it's been preached and practiced, right. That's a hard thing to lose sight of. So I would never say that there was anything like hard, but yeah, there have been some times where it's been like uncomfortable maybe.
No, I get that. Journalism has changed considerably from when you first started. And let's talk about integrity and the role of integrity. How has it evolved since you started out in terms of just reporting stories? With all the digital stuff, you got to rush to get the story out quicker than when newspapers were being printed, and that was it.
It is harder, I would say, nowadays because of the immediacy and how the news cycle is 24/7. Like I would say that it is harder to maintain that sense of like accuracy is still the most important thing, but like that gap between accuracy and immediacy has closed, and that makes it harder. The other thing that I would say is, you used the word integrity. I think that there just doesn't seem to be as much of an emphasis on that nowadays as there used to be. And I think that's a shame, but it is what it is. Like, you can't fight it. I think that going back to that objectivity thing, like there's just not as much, the line is getting a little bit blurred. And so that can be challenging or frustrating from time to time, but you just got to put it in the back of your mind and soldier ahead. I think there will always be a place for pure, objective reporting, and I think I
hope so.
I hope so too. But I'm pretty confident that it will. It just might be harder to find as time goes on, but hopefully not.
How has social media made your job harder or easier? Because as a part of what you do, you tweet out your stories, but has it made it harder or easier?
I would say probably harder from a time consumption standpoint. Like, it's like you have to be on alert at all times, because if somebody tweets something, that's news sometimes.
Something we never thought we would be saying like 20 years ago.
No, that was it. It has been something that has really turned this whole industry on its head. But I would say from that standpoint, like constantly having to be on alert, that has made it hard. But you look at it from the other standpoint, from the other side of it, it's given us easier access to the people that we are keeping, that we are reporting on, and that we're working with. It's given us much easier access to them. I know, like we're with recruiting years and years ago, you'd have to chase down phone numbers. You'd have to do that, and you'd have to be the one. We would have to be the ones initiating and engaging. Whereas now, these recruits and these coaches and things like that, like they're the ones who are doing engaging just by simply putting out their message. And again, they're easier to find and reach and contact now. So there are good things and bad things. That's
I agree. It's the way with a lot of things. It's good and bad. And I try to look for the good in that.
Right.
Try to look at, I use LinkedIn. I go on there and I'll just search for a former student athlete. And I think my last episode I put out was with an assistant commissioner for the Big West Conference. I just found her on LinkedIn, and she had been a rower at University of Kansas. By the way, she had never rowed before in her life when she was recruited. Great story. Story. She was I won't go into it. Can't even think of her name right now. But it was just things like that. It's put me in contact with people that I probably never would have had the option to meet and talk to and things like that. But no, I agree with you on that. And for the other thing is, when my mom was still alive, she couldn't really get around very much in the last few years of her life. But she had an iPad. And she learned how to use Facebook. She would go on there and look at my page, my sisters, my brothers. She would talk to all of her grandkids. She would find people she hadn't seen in 50 years and talk to them on there. And I just think that if we look for the good in things, we can use it the most positive way. It is what it is, and we can't control everything. What is one skill that you think young journalists should be trying to build right now?
I would think just probably interpersonal skills, like the ability to identify what is a story and what is not a story. That's something, but probably more than that is just like the ability to to me, the best reporters are the ones who can easiest relate to people. Like, you can have all the investigative skills in the world. You can be the best writer in the world, but if you can't get into a place with people that, you take your game to a whole other level if you can do that. And I would say that's probably what I would say, like is one of the most important things is that, like, we're sitting here talking about social media, and that I think has taken away some of the practice of interpersonal skills. Yeah. And I think that's probably put more emphasis on honing those skills and being better at that. And so that would be my.
And texting, I think texting in general, this generation now, I think that they spend much of their time texting each other instead of talking to people. You talked about growing up in a small town, and where I grew up was 5,000 people. And I think for me, which I'm guessing is the same for you, you learn how to talk to people in those small town areas. Yeah. And I think that if somebody says, what's your greatest strength? I think the ability to talk to anyone, just about anything, and being inquisitive. Whereas I think a lot of times people, especially the younger generation now, is maybe not so inquisitive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I agree with that.
So let's talk about your wife really quickly, and then we'll be wrapping it up. So is she still working?
Yeah, she is the news director at the Commercial Appeal.
Okay, that makes it kind of. And you guys have kids? I think you.
We do not. We have a dog. He's turning 19 in September. He's a grumpy old man, but we've had him since 2009, and we adopted him in Hattiesburg. And so we have a 19-year-old dog.
So how do y'all balance that working at the same company kind of thing? How do y'all balance that as a couple?
We've been doing it for so long. It's hard to remember because
Sure.
it's old hat at this point. But
Right.
I would say we are very intentional about not talking about work when we're
Right.
not at work. You know, it doesn't always work out, but we try very hard to not talk about work, as
Yeah.
when we can avoid it, we do. So there's that, but it genuinely has never been hard. It's just been natural. I know a lot of people, especially since we got together, people talk about like, how do you do it? I don't know that I work with my spouse and that sort of thing. And we don't technically, I mean,
Work.
while we
Yeah.
do technically work at the same place, we don't necessarily work together. She's news and I'm sports, and there is a division there. And so that, I don't know if that helps or not. When we were in Hattiesburg, it was probably less of a division. And so maybe that's it. Maybe we got used to it that way, and
Sure.
that made it easier now. But no, it's always just been, it's never really been difficult. It's just been a natural thing. And so, yeah, it's never really taken work to get through it.
I think that says a lot about your relationship too, the ability to do that. So let me ask you this. If you could go back and talk to your 9-year-old self, talk to 9-year-old Jason, what advice would you give him?
Other than lay off the Twinkies a little bit, maybe one less Twinkie a day, I would say probably don't ever, because I feel like I've always had this natural curiosity and this natural, whenever I do something, I go at it with both feet. And
Right.
I don't ever remember a time where I did anything halfway. And I think I would probably just go back and tell myself that, don't ever lose that. Not that I feel like I have, but I think I would just reinforce that ideal.
Right.
Just keep doing what you're doing. Even if it may seem like it won't work out, it definitely will, as long as you keep doing this.
So let's talk bucket list. What is one thing that's on your bucket list that you would like to do next?
I would like to cover a Final Four run. That would be nice.
Oh, I would
That would
like
be
you to
nice.
cover one of those too.
That would be super. Let me think. Bucket list. Yeah.
Let me throw this in there. What's one athlete that you would like to sit down and have an interview that you've never been able to, or you haven't had the option or opportunity?
Like right now,
Yeah.
like a current athlete, I would say, because it's interesting. We're doing this interview, and just yesterday, I was in the 2 days ago. I was in the media tent with Justin Rose, who won the FedEx Sanctions Championship. So check that one off. The 2013 U.S. Open winner, we can check that one off. I don't think still a Braves fan.
Right.
So that kind of comes to mind immediately, like Ronald Acuna Jr., who's arguably one of the best players in baseball right now. He plays for the Braves. Like that would be a neat one, something like that. Maybe,
Okay.
I don't know, Watani or something
He's
like
in
that.
he's in some trouble right now.
I did. I know. I saw
just,
that. I saw the Hawaii stuff.
Yeah.
It would be a good time to interview them.
It would. So have you ever had a desire to write a book in the future?
I've had a desire to write a book in the past. And I feel like I do probably still would like to write a book about something at some point.
Right.
But no, so when I was in Hattiesburg covering high school football, there's a high school there that was one of the smallest schools in the state. Yet it was called, not
Right.
the school closed down. It merged with another school and became something else. But when I was in Hattiesburg, they won, I don't know, 93% of their games or something. And,
Oh my God.
and they weren't just playing schools that were their size. They were playing like some of the biggest schools and some of the best
Right.
schools in the state. And they were beating them, and they were winning state championship after state championship. And they were pumping out. It eventually got to the point where a lot of the players that were playing for that team were making it to the NFL. If you look back at one of those teams, there was one of those rosters at Bassfield that had, I want to say, 4 or 5 players
God.
that went on to play in the NFL, and even more than that went on to play at like the Power 4 college level and things like that. And so I spent a lot of time covering that program and wrote bunches and bunches of stories. There was one that was like, what's in the water at Bassfield? And I went and I found the person, the water commissioner or whatever. And I talked to him. I was like, what's in the water at Bassfield? And doing those sorts of stories and telling that, like, I remember I asked the coach one time, because that was around the time where high school, where like recruiting was a thing where these high schools would go out and pull from other places. And I asked him one time, I said, did you recruit? And he said, people don't move to Bassfield. So no, so absolutely not. Like, I have to fight every single day to keep people from leaving Bassfield. And so I thought there was a time where I thought maybe a book on Bassfield would be something. But yeah, I think eventually I would. My mom tells me a lot that I should write something, a book on something.
We like your mom.
She's the best. But who knows? Maybe.
Okay.
We'll see.
We didn't really get into the FedEx St. Jude Classic that happened this past week. And you said the highlight was being there in the tent, the media tent.
Yeah, I always enjoy that. It's a change of pace. And you're talking about being right there to witness whatever it would be, probably 0.0001% of people who can do what they do. And to have a front row seat for that, and to get to talk about it with them, sometimes one-on-one, is really cool. But then you throw all the other stuff on top of it. The exciting finish, the fact that like bigger picture thing with St. Jude, and the fact that I want to say it's the single largest fundraiser that St. Jude does annually.
Yes, I believe so.
And you put that on top of it with the other stuff, it's always a special week.
Where can people find you on social media if they want to follow you?
Twitter at Munzly, Munzly, and it's the same on Instagram. And that's pretty much it. I don't really do any others.
I'll put all that in the show notes for you. Really quick, really rapid fire Q&A. Favorite sports movie of all time?
The Sandlot is up there.
Oh.
That's one that I still watch it. And maybe that's the answer, just because of the staying power that it has had for me. But there's so many good. Remember the Titans is fantastic. You know what? Blue Chips. That's the answer. Blue Chips is my favorite. That is my favorite sports movie. Definitely. Blue Chips.
That's a good answer.
I promise you, Penny, Blue Chips is my favorite sports movie.
That's a good one. Okay. Go-to snack or drink before covering a game?
Probably either pretzels or popcorn.
Okay.
I like the salty stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, pretzels or popcorn.
First concert you ever went to?
Paul McCartney, 1993. It was Paul McCartney, 1993, Superdome in New Orleans.
Oh.
He was technically solo, but it was basically Wings. He was on tour for, what was it? The album was, I think, called Off the Ground. And so that was the first concert I ever went to, was Paul McCartney.
Okay, last question. One word people use to describe you.
Which people? Because that answer can vary.
Let's go with good people. Let's go with happy people.
Okay.
Friends.
All right, friends. That's a good one. I would say maybe, genuine.
Okay.
We'll just go with that. Genuine.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, Jason, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it immensely.
You're quite welcome. So that's a wrap for today's show. Thank you all for listening, especially if you've made it all the way to this part of the show. I appreciate all your support. Another reminder to subscribe to the show wherever you listen or watch. My mantra is like, share, and review. Follow us on social media at 5THQRT Podcast. Until next time, remember, change is your ally, and it paves the way for greatness. Stay inspired. Have a great rest of the week.